Today, I want to do a kind of deep dive on a conspiracy called the Bilderberg Conspiracy. Before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to Wendigoon, who did the Conspiracy Iceberg on his channel, and he made me want to do a cover of the iceberg itself, but in the fairness of not exactly copying what he did, I decided I wanted to go ahead and do a deep dive on some of the topics that he covers in the iceberg. Such as the Bilderberg Conspiracy, which is in the tier 1 of his iceberg. I will say that there are some topics on the iceberg that I am not going to cover because I will either be banned or I will have to censor myself, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be kicked off the platform. There's also some subjects that I won't cover because they're either insanely well known to the point where it's just mainstream at this point, or they're just kind of boring to me. I know that might kind of sound a little bit selfish, but I would rather cover topics that are interesting. That way I can be passionate about it and actually talk about something that I care about, rather than just rambling about something that means nothing to me. I want to say that also I am human. That's why I'm reading from some of the bullet points that I wrote down so that I don't completely lose track of what I'm doing. I'm going to make mistakes. I might reference something that's incorrect. I might say something that's incorrect. If you see me say something that's incorrect, just feel free to say something in the comments about the fact that I said something incorrect, and I will double check it, I'll read over it, and if you're right, I will come back and I'll either fix it and edit, or I will straight up give credit to you and say, I made a mistake, they called it out. Fantastic. And I would rather be told about it than it just be some place of ignorance for me. So feel free to tell me if I make a mistake in the comments. Without further delay, let's go ahead and get into it. So before Wendigoon's video, I hadn't actually heard about this at all. I had never heard of this theory. I hadn't heard anything related to it. It's kind of similar to Bohemian Grove, where I have, obviously everybody's heard of Bohemian Grove. That one's very well known, but this one it's less theory, more just a conspiracy, because they do in fact meet. It's a group of wealthy investors from North America and government officials from North America meet with wealthy elites and people that enter in the government for Europe, and they go and have these super private meetings where no one's allowed in. There's no media coverage. They're only allowed to make small remarks to what are talked about in the meetings, and they're also not allowed to discuss who said what, and a lot of topics are also just not allowed to be spoken about outside of meetings, which is very interesting to me. The theory basically is, it isn't a theory in terms of people thinking that it doesn't actually exist, because the meetings happen. They even know who the person who organizes the meetings are. They know who it is that even keeps the media in line and stops people from talking about it outside. It's more of the theories come in that because they're wealthy elites, and that because they're so private, and they're acting like they're hiding something, that they might be hiding something, and that's where the theories start to come in, where they're utilizing their power to they're working together to basically build a new world order, or to become more financially powerful, or to become more powerful as a whole, and how they can manipulate people, stuff like that. That's where the theories come in. The actual meetings happen. So in the meetings that they do attend, they are very selective about who goes. Obviously, it's around 120 to 150 different executives, CEOs, princes, counts, stuff like that, that go. And then they are extremely, very, very careful about any audio or any media possibly getting in or out of the hotel, I believe it is, that they set up for this. I think they're called the Bilderberg hotels, if I recall correctly. Yeah, they're literally the Bilderberg hotels that they do the meetings. And they are just very careful about who they let in, what audio gets out, and what media gets seen about it. They do tell people later on in here, I have it wrote down somewhere, they do announce what they supposedly talked about, but it's hard to be sure that they are telling the truth of that, because again, there's no transparency, there's no accountability, there's no way to know that they are actually talking about what they say they're talking about. So the ideas for the conspiracies tend to be that they are meeting to determine futures for each of the nations and ways to grow financially or manipulate the populace, or what disasters are coming, etc. So there is somebody I wanted to quote in here. His name is Adam Smith. He once said, "People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion. But the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or in some contrivance to raise prices." So basically my interpretation of that is, what I understand from what I just read to you. Basically it means that powerful people, they don't do meetings very often. And when they do it, either it's because they are trying to work on a plan or a plot, and it's usually against the public, or they're doing it to discuss some sort of financial manipulation, because something most people already know, when you have a lot of money, it makes it easier to make a lot more money. That's how our financial institution works. That's how a lot of countries' financial institution works. Is it unfortunate? Sure. For people like you and me, it is. But for them, this is what they do. This is how they maintain, wealth and power. What I just quoted from Adam Smith, that is already very well known. And that happens a lot in what's called an oligarchy. An oligarchy is where the wealthy and the elite have more power to sway the government than the average citizen does. The official line that the information discussed is usually concerning megatrends and major issues facing the world. Okay, so when they're at the meetings, this is what they're usually talking about. So supposedly in 2019, that was the latest one I could find. I don't know if maybe because of COVID they didn't meet during 2020. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, this is what they talked about in 2019. They talked about artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, chemical weapon threats, Greece, Iran, NATO, Russia, terrorism, and the US elections. This was all the officials disclosed, as they are not allowed to speak further on any meetings. Furthermore, because of the closed doors and the secretive nature of meetings, many people who take part in these meetings are speculated to discuss things such as wealth, poverty, and politics, without having to parrot their political party views, and tend to have much more diabolical ideas, though this is all the theory aspect. So basically this is where we start hitting more of the theory side of it, rather than the actual conspiracy side of it, because whereas we know they have these meetings and we know they cover megatrend topics, we can't just make the assumption that they are actually being diabolical. It literally could be this idea right here where they're meeting with other wealthy elites because they're the same birds of a flock, or whatever the saying is, where basically they're like each other, so they want to meet together and they want to be able to talk about things without worrying about different politics or any other crap. Basically let their hair down, without the worry of being recorded or someone telling on them or anything like that. Whereas that in itself is a little suspicious. I do understand that it's kind of like famous people, like celebrities, in the sense that sometimes they really just want to be left alone to openly speak their mind without being judged. Whether they're saying good or bad things during that time, that's not what's up for debate here. So another theory is that they may also be exploring what they really think and be exploring different scenarios in terms of that. And what I mean by that is kind of like thought experiments, where they basically go down a rabbit hole or an idea that they normally wouldn't be able to look at from like a more authentic point of view, to where they're not, you know, having to please shareholders, or they're not having to sing the praises of some political party they don't actually believe in, stuff like that. So the reason why this is believed so heavily is because in the scenario where there's no media, there's no recordings, there's no tattling, basically, there's no accountability. To put it bluntly, there's zero accountability for what they talk about or what they plan here. So with all that being said, that basically gives them the freedom to speak their minds without saying anything about any votes or statements, agendas, or any issues. And at the end of the meeting, everything is private and secret. They can just talk about what they want without any fear. I will say that some of the bigger people that have showed up to this, to the meetings, that is, they were executives from Google, from BP, from Shell, from, it looks like Deutsche Bank. It's like a German bank or a Dutch bank or something. And a ton of other just massive corporations. The average numbers, from what people have been able to tell, is 2/3 of them are roughly from Europe and the rest are from North America. I don't know if maybe they invite foreign powers or foreign executives to these meetings at all. The fact that it's just North America and Europe supposedly is a little bit troubling. The leading rational theory, well, more rational theory, is that they simply are gathering as a group of wealthy, like-minded people to congratulate each other, discuss major topics, and let their hair down, so to speak, which is why they would need to be so private and closed off, which makes sense, honestly. It's easy to speculate that they're just planning and plotting a bunch of evil, but at the same time, they literally could just be meeting with people who are like-minded in a super private circumstance, so they don't have to keep putting up a front. So I want to go a step further. I want to talk about the fact that this is called a conspiracy theory in itself. I actually take issue with that, because calling it a conspiracy theory, it takes away from the fact that it is a conspiracy. Conspiracy theories actually give conspiracies a really bad name, because conspiracies do actually exist. Politics at this sort of elite level is literally describing a conspiracy, the exact way that Adam Smith meant it. So, the man I quoted earlier, it's exactly what he meant when he was talking about a conspiracy, or when he was talking about, the wealthies getting together is very seldom. Why would they get together other than to do something sinister? Which elites gather only once a year. They do not engage in self-criticism, but instead they reinforce the assumptions that they have collected and made about the best sort of economic and political order. This is the exact process famous psychologist Irving Janis described as groupthink, where the dissent is marginalized and consensus is amplified. So if you've heard the term echo chamber, that's kind of like a good way to describe group thinking, where basically you tune out and you cut people out of your life that are, contradictive to what you believe, and then you amplify your own thoughts by surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded. So in this circumstance, it's on a much higher level. If the participants at Bilderberg really wanted to explore global challenges, they wouldn't need a super private meeting to do it. We already know that the world is ran by the elite, and that it makes a super private meeting for the elite so scary. I will say, in some defense of the Bilderberg participants, the meetings were supposedly founded to foster a relationship between Europe and North America, which certain parts of our history have been a real issue. And they were were also founded to prevent another world war, which, again, very fair. The current chairman of the Bilderberg Society is Henry de Castries. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. He has allowed some new discussions that I did mention. He's allowed some discussion of what's going on in the meetings. He's allowed them to be talked about outside of the meetings, which is fairly new, but strictly only if they aren't traceable, specifically traceable. Basically, you can't say, so-and-so doesn't like this country. Well, if you piece together the specific country they may have mentioned, or who wouldn't like them, then you'd be able to figure out who said it. So basically, can't say things like that. It has to be extremely generalized, and it can't be something that someone could relay. So from what I've seen, basically no one at the meetings is still talking about it. They're still very hidden about what's going on. And then he specifically states that they are not allowed to ever talk about who has said what at any of the meetings. So even if someone did decide to quote someone at a meeting, they wouldn't be allowed to specify who it was in any circumstance. That in itself doesn't quell many theories, which, I mean, kind of obviously, and many people who knew about the meetings criticize it for its lack of transparency and remarking that it leads to a lack of accountability. That's something I've been saying repeatedly. I wrote it down for myself in here for that exact reason. The very fact that they are meeting privately, that they are all wealthy elites, there's no transparency, and it makes it very hard to have any sort of accountability to anything they do. We can act like them just going to a meeting and talking is harmless, but in reality, wealthy powers getting together and discussing things that they could enact on their own outside of the meeting, it's not exactly a safe thing to do, especially since there's no accountability and there's no way to really track what they say or what they plan or what they're doing there. Overall, this conspiracy is real, it's troubling, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years we hear a lot more about this, not because I think they're gonna come out and just break down an entire, this is our master plan, or monologue to us about some evil plan they have. My guess is we will have somebody who ends up getting information about them and exposing what they're talking about at the meetings. Maybe not. It could remain secret forever for all I know. So basically, in closing, what I want to say is that this whole Bilderberg conspiracy, it's interesting to me simply because it is a mystery in itself. It's kind of a more tamed conspiracy compared to what I would like to cover. Here soon, I do plan on covering way more extreme theories, some more interesting ones that maybe have a lot more depth to them. I tried to pick one that was going to be a little bit shorter because I wanted to start with like a 10-ish minute video. Again, I want to shout out Wendigoon for giving me the idea to do some more specific theories. I really wanted to do an iceberg, but I'm a little worried about just copying him. But who knows? If he reaches out to me and he's like, hey, do an iceberg, maybe I'll do it. I want to thank you all for joining me. If you liked what you saw, give me a like. Tell me what you liked about it in the comments section. Tell me what you'd like me to cover next. Tell me if there's something else you'd like me to go over or changes you'd like me to make. I really like doing these edited face cam videos. I really like covering kind of interesting mystery topics. So if you have anything like that, let me know. If you want to support me, the easiest way, honestly, is subscribing and liking my videos. Comments also help. And then if you share my videos with other people and I blow up, I'll shout out anybody in the comments and I'll cover almost any topic that won't get me banned. If you want to come check out some of my other content, I stream on Twitch a couple times during the week. I want a more consistent schedule for streaming, but I'm trying to figure out what exactly I want to cover each week. And you can find me on twitch.tv/CPTMorgan1991, or you can find me on Facebook or Twitter at CPTMorgan1991, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.